Paul Yeager alongside head coach for the Valley Tigers, Gary Swenson. And coach, it's 94 degrees outside. It's perfect weather to have a two-a-day. Oh, wait, you don't have those anymore. So let's talk about, we'll get to practice in a little bit, but let's talk about the off-season. Talk me through some of the off-season site visits for some of your players and the camps they've been going to and some of the team camps.
Well, our off-season is pretty regimented, Paul. We got back in the weight room right after Thanksgiving when our season ended in the quarterfinal loss to Ankeny. And some of our players who don't do other sports, they've been in that weight room a long time. So it was fun to get on the practice field when we started our skills camp on August 5th and actually do some football things. We spend about 6 weeks right after Christmas in before school agility training sessions. Once we hit the summer and school was out where we could have contact with our players, we did some position-specific drill sessions all summer. And we kept lifting. We did a speed development, a Sunday speed development session for about 6 weeks in the spring. So our job in the off-season is the physical development of our players. And then when you hit summer, you can work on some skill development. And then when practice starts, you begin to put your team together. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we're about a week and a half in. And I think the loss of the two-a-day sessions wasn't as big a deal as maybe it was played out to be. It cost you a couple practices because we were only going 3 days of two-a-days anyway. And I really actually kind of like the new format. We went a little bit longer when we could, but we were rarely on the field for 3 hours, which is what they allow. That's just too long. By the time you get over 2 hours, it's pretty tough for a high school athlete to stay locked in mentally. But I think it all turned out okay. I'm not sure. We're a little bit further behind just from an installation standpoint when we didn't have those 3 days of two-a-days, but not that much.
It's one of those things that you have to work on quicker hits, or is there more meetings now?
We did a little bit more of that, but not really. I'm not sure how much we actually changed. I think we just knew that we made some of those 3-a-day, those 3-hour sessions that you could have. There were portions of walk-through installation that we normally didn't take time out of a practice to do, and we kind of looked at that as a recovery period. And a few more chalk talks, video sessions that we don't normally at the high school level have time to do. But the on-the-field practices were really fairly close to mirroring what we've always done.
One of the things you have to do is replace seniors that graduated. About an average season, you're looking at 5 returners on one side, 4 returners on another. Let's start on the defensive side. You lose a couple of guys who are they're in Division I camps right now. Let's talk about some of the replacements there and how that's looking.
Well, I think when we looked at what we had to replace, the 2 positions on the team, well, there was actually 3. The quarterback, Tanner Stein, developed into a really good senior quarterback, even though he only played 1 year. So we're coming in with inexperience at that position. In the offensive line, you don't replace a Jake Campos, but I still think as a unit, maybe we're ahead of where we were a year ago. And the loss of a Division I defensive lineman like Sam Reardon, we can't put any one player in his position to make up for that loss of talent. But I think from a team concept, we're not that far off of where we were a year ago. But, that plays out when you get to actually play games. And I think offensively we're probably going to take a little more time in some areas because of the quarterback situation. But I still think we're better up front as a unit. And because that started out really slow a year ago and then developed into a pretty good unit by the time we got to Ankeny in that last game. I think we'll be ahead of where we were last year going down to Ottumwa in week 1. But, we have moved John Reardon over to that split tackle spot. And John seems like he's played a lot, but he's still only a sophomore. But he's going to be a quality player there. And then Aaron Howard is back at a guard. Josh Brunk is back at a guard. Brady Smith played as a sophomore in spots. He's our starting center. Our tackle, what we call our tight tackle to the tight end side, is still in flux a little bit. But pretty much those spots up front are nailed down at this point. So that's where it always starts. I'm always more concerned where we're at up front than where we're at in the backfield. Defensively, Dakota Miller was a starting linebacker for us. He's back. We really have 3 guys back in the secondary that played a lot. Keller Preen played as a sophomore back there. Connor Sorge played as a junior back there. Parker Johnson played as a backup as a safety. Those guys will all be in the lineup. So we were really fairly well set back there. Up front, we've got some new guys. Nate Spacek is probably the one returning guy that played a lot last year. I think the other spots will be filled by good players, but not Division I type caliber players.
But if they're playing as a unit, you can do a lot of things. And if you've only got one really good guy, not to say that you didn't last year, but you'd just as soon have a strong unit as you would an outstanding one player.
Without question. Football is hard to be a one-man show. So I think we can make up for that with strong team play, and I think we're heading in that direction.
All right, you kind of talk a little bit about the backfield. Drew Gray is one of those that was kind of fun to watch, spent a lot of time in the weight room, got a lot of time as a sophomore, probably expecting big things out of him.
Well, Drew's a really good player, and I think the key for him is we can move him around. He's really not a fullback. That's where we play him, but he can be a wide receiver. He can be a tailback. I think the key for us back there is, do we have a healthy Tyus Mason or not? And so far it looks like we do. I think he's going to have an impactful year on our offense, and if we keep him on the field, he's going to have a big year. He was really never healthy last year and still gained 1,000 yards, but he's going to get the ball a lot. He can do a lot of things when he gets the ball. And early we'll need him to. With a young quarterback, he's going to have to be the focus of our offense, and then hopefully we can develop as we go.
Well, Mason's health amenities were publicized a little bit, but, a Mason-Gray combo, I think anybody would like to have that.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade our depth at running back for any other team, because behind those guys, Trevor Bell's a junior. Michael Christensen is a senior that's going to play a lot. There's really 4 guys right there. I'd be comfortable with any of them being our starting tailbacks. Well, they're all going to play, but clearly the focus for us is Tyus and what he can do for us as our feature guy.
All right, who's going to hand the ball off to him, though? Has that been decided yet?
Well, right now we have a sophomore that we would say is our number 1 guy. Talon Alexander, we think, is a good player. He's got a lot to learn. He is just a sophomore. Maybe not the most talented athlete we've ever had at that position, but he'll be a good quarterback. He's got a good feel for the game. He understands the game. When he throws the ball, he's got fairly good location, and he can spin the ball. So Will Lounsbury's a junior. He competed for the spot. Connor LeGrone is a senior. He competed. Those 2 guys, whether they will play or not, I don't know, but I could put them both out there and we'd be okay.
Who's throwing the football, or who they're throwing to? You lost Clint Buffelli. You lost Tanner Hinkle. 2 good targets there. Who's going to step up on that wide receiver?
Well, they were probably the best pair of wide receivers we've ever had. We've always had kind of one feature go-to guy, but they were outstanding. Tanner Hinkle was as good an athlete as we've ever had here, and Clint, just with his size and athleticism, when we put those 2 together, they were really good. I like our group this year, though. Dominic Daphne's a junior. His brother DJ was a senior receiver a year ago who played a lot. Dominic's a kind of a put together a little bigger than his brother was, and we think he'll be pretty good. Anthony Holmes is a new student for us who will play a lot at receiver. I think if those 2 are healthy, they're going to be a nice pair of receivers. Sam Hartman returns at tight end. Blake Salisbury returns at tight end. They both played a lot a year ago. So we've got some experience that comes back to us offensively, and that'll help a young quarterback.
All right, you're just a little more than a week away from getting into game week here. Have you started thinking about Waukee yet?
Certainly. We haven't started to game plan that yet because we're still playing against Valley every day, just trying to fill out 4 spots in our lineup. But, our sights have to turn to them pretty quick here, and we'll start piecemeal some things into practice that'll be specific to them. And I think our first 4 games are against 4 top 10 teams. And I would rank Dowling as good as anybody in the state. I think Southeast Polk and Ankeny Centennial will be top 5 teams, and Waukees' young talent is as good as anybody. So it's a pretty exciting way to start the year. There's no weak team, no gimmies in there whatsoever. Every one of those teams can beat us, and I think we're going to be in every game with a chance to win as well.
And those 4, I would imagine that kind of, does that keep the focus of the guys knowing that your first 4 are so tough?
It should. We didn't really talk about it, but they knew when they looked at the schedule. They knew, and you know, high school kids maybe don't look at that as a collegiate athlete who's maybe a UNI who opens with an Iowa State, but they still know that it wasn't like last year we were looking at Ottumwa as an easy opener, because it wasn't. But this is different. These 4 teams are, I would say they're probably the most talented 4 teams on our schedule right out of the chute. So we don't have time to get better. We got to be pretty good right away.
All right, head coach Gary Swenson of the Valley Tigers, thank you so very much. And we'll have that opener here on valleywebcasting.com. Thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you on August the 30th for that home opener with Waukee. This is Paul Yeager reporting.